They say his name is Vengeance. Today we're talking about the Batman. Welcome to Victims and Villains. If you guys are new to our content, we create content like what you're watching right now simply to educate and engage individuals like yourselves on mental health awareness and suicide prevention through pop culture. My name is Captain Nostalgia, and I am one of the hosts and podcasters here, along with our film festival director for Horrific Hope, which you guys can find more information about in the links below, including our lineup, more about what we do as far as our mission is concerned, podcasts, more reviews like this, and most importantly, our mental health resource library. I feel like we have been waiting so long for this movie. I feel like since Victims and Villains has existed, we have been slowly, in some way, shape, or form, covering the Batman and kind of its evolution to where we are now. Backstory time. For those of you guys that don't know, Victims and Villains came around 2016. We used to actually be just a news podcast. And so we developed on Ben Affleck being a part of this project, Ben Affleck leaving, Matt Reeves stepping in, Robert Pattinson stepping in, all the COVID updates, so on and so forth. It's finally here. God bless Matt Reeves. Let's just start off by saying this. So this version of The Dark Knight tells the story of a Bruce Wayne in his second year that is facing off against a Zodiac-type killer named the Riddler, and he is basically exposing Gotham City's most corrupt people, which include Colin Farrell's Penguin, John Turturro's Carmine Falcone, even the Wayne legacy, and much more. There's so much that it happens in this 3 hours that I just want to first start off by saying, studios, take notes, please. When you look to movies like Spider-Man 3, The Dark Knight Rises, and other films, even Batman and Robin, even films that are trying so hard to have one central villain and then a secondary and a tertiary villain, it just always feels like a muffled mess. The Batman is the first comic book movie I've ever seen that is dealing with multiple villains, but the multiple villains never quite feel like they're either overstaying their welcome or that it's too much. On the contrary, this film revolves around Paul Dano's Riddler and his scheme to expose the corrupt nature of Gotham City. Literally every villain that you have in here, it's not just eye candy for hardcore nerds like myself. It is legitimate. It is a legitimate way connect all of these villains together, including Colin Farrell's Penguin, which I really actually liked. As I've listened to our podcast before, I'm not the biggest fan when it comes to Penguin. He's not one of my favorite villains. In fact, he's probably one of my least favorite Batman villains. But the makeup for Farrell in this just looks incredible. From start to finish, he's almost unrecognizable. His voice is perfect. Farrell has such a minor part in this, but I never thought I'd come out of this movie saying, I'm ready for the HBO Max series. Then you have John Turturro, and John Turturro feels like the closest to a secondary villain this film has, and when I say that, he plays it off really well. We've seen it in the past before where, whether it's been Gotham or whether it's been Nolan's trilogy, this take on Carmine Falcone. Now Falcone, Turturro's version, plays him. He has a lot of charisma and a lot of likability, but there's this terrifying edge about him. That line is a very, very thin line that Turturro and Reeves walk extraordinarily well. When we're talking about villains, Paul Dano is literally the star of this movie. I feel like sometimes a comic book movie is only as good as its villain, and I'll get into Pattinson and Kravitz in just a second, but Dano is the guy that you want to watch. Now, I love Zodiac. It's one of my favorite films that has been made in the 21st century. I think David Fincher delivers a masterpiece with that movie. And Matt Reeves in the press kind of talking about how the Riddler is a very sadistic, kind of almost new take on the Zodiac Killer through the eyes of the Riddler, Dano absolutely nails it. Like his take on it is cold, twisted, but also just very sympathetic in an eerie kind of way. I'm just gonna leave it at that. Let's just say that his performance right here lands him up top with some of the best Batman performances out there. He has now set a new high for what the Riddler is, but also what a Batman villain is capable of. I think Heath Ledger stripped down. Now, the moment people have been waiting for, the Robert Pattinson take from Victims and Villains. Been hearing that Pattinson could be the new favorite for The Dark Knight moving forward, and I'll be honest, it's really hard for me to kind of pit that in here just after one movie. But let me just say, his Bruce Wayne is barely in this movie, and that in and of itself is an interesting take on the character, because this very much is a Batman tale. This is a noir mystery that we've never seen from him. Does Reeves craft a compelling and riveting story that draws you to the edge of your seat, but it also plays on your emotions, and Pattinson at the middle of everything delivers not only a broken but also a brutal Batman in the likes of the Batman warehouse scene from BVS. Honestly, can't wait for this character to be explored further. I really hope Warner Brothers, if you just happen to stumble upon this, greenlight 2 and 3, please. Honestly, I need more of this world. I need more of Pattinson. Pattinson's take is something we've never seen before. He's a detective, but he's also very much the hero that we see in the comics. Again, he's battered, he's bruised, he's broken, and it's glorious. I thought Anne Hathaway set a pretty high record with her take on Catwoman. Catwoman is one of my favorite DC characters, period. Kravitz, like Pattinson, is a layered, broken tale of an origin story, and the thing that I loved about them is how their stories collided but also stand magnificently individually apart, and both of Kravitz and Pattinson's performance reflect their own individual brokenness. I truly just love this. The first time that I feel like we've ever gotten a Catwoman on screen that not only is awesome, sorry Anne, but also at the same time has a deep character. For this being a comic book movie, you can expect great action spectacle sequences. There's tons of them, whether it's with the Penguin or the Joker or Iceberg Lounge. This film has you covered. On top of that, this is a deeply personal character journey for Batman and also the Riddler and Catwoman as well. I'm gonna stop. These are my spoiler-free thoughts. We're gonna be doing a whole spoiler-filled episode with the director of Edwin, an official selection of Horrific Hope. Next week, we're going to be getting into it. We're going to be talking about his film. We're going to be talking about the festival. We're going to be talking about what this film does for Batman moving forward. And let me just say, DC, you have set a bar incredibly high for the rest of your movies this year, because this one is going to go ahead and get a 5 out of 5 for me. I absolutely loved this thing. It takes its time. It earns every minute, every second of its 3-hour runtime. And on top of that, it is a deeply compelling character study on not just its protagonist, but as well as its antagonist and secondary character of Catwoman. In this episode, Mental Health Moments. To our content, Mental Health Moment is where we take a theme of mental health and we pull it apart to deconstruct the stigma surrounding mental health for just a few moments. One of the things that this film does extremely well is it provides narrative perspective from the Bruce Wayne character, and it's kind of almost think Rorschach's journal. But in this, he talks about how the scars that are left unhealed carry weight. Paraphrasing, of course. But this take on the Batman and that saying of unresolved scarring is incredible to consider. It almost feels prolific because there's so much truth in that if we truly want to heal and if we truly want to grow, we need to face those scars head on. And sometimes scarring is incredibly tough because it sometimes feels like if you move the wrong way, it's like pouring salt into them. But just because we have scars doesn't necessarily mean that we have to go through a toxic healing process. Sometimes a portion of going through a healthy healing process means that we are quite literally going through a healthy healing process. Going to therapy, we're taking steps towards reconciliation. We're facing the sources of those scars very deeply and very head on. And I'll be honest, I'm no stranger to this. I have had my share. I've shared it on here hundreds of times about where I stand as far as faith and religion, and I've equally with that, I've also had my own share of church hurts. The process of those church hurts and a process of those healings means that I am having to confront those people and have really hard, really tough conversations. So while it might not be church hurts, while it might be something as heavy as caring about the brokenness of your city or your country, talk to someone. Start there. Talk to someone and have them just go back and forth with them in regards to your mental health and where you stand in it all. That's gonna do it for me. I'm just gonna suggest you guys check out our mental health resource library below and check out our brand new episode on Vengeance, a love story from our That's High Praise and Nicolas Cage podcast, which dropped today right here on YouTube and wherever you guys get your podcasts from. Again, we'll see you guys next week to talk about the Batman in his spoiler filled. And when you guys see it this weekend, can drop the links. Drop your thoughts in the comments or tweet to us on Twitter. Have a great night, guys.